Mr. Speaker, later this week, the Congress is expected to consider health care bills. I'd like to take this moment to compare today's rule on the chemical facility bill with the rule expected on the health care bills. Today's rule allows 10 amendments, five from the majority and 5 from the minority, on a bill that costs approximately $900 million. Although the rule is not open, it's important to admit that the rule allows some debate on the underlying issues. The rule expected later this week on the health care legislation will probably include an amendment written by the Speaker. Perhaps that's the only amendment that will be allowed. We'll see. And that bill spends about 1.3, I believe, trillion dollars. It seems that the more money Congress spends, the more likely we seem to have a closed debate process. And that, I believe, is contrary to the way the majority promised to run this House. On the opening day of the 110th Congress, the distinguished chairlady of the Rules Committee came to the floor and said that the new majority would, quote, begin to return this chamber to its rightful place as the home of democracy and deliberation in our great nation, end quote. That pledge was echoed in a document written by the distinguished speaker called A New Direction for America, where she stated, and by the way, the statement is still on her website, I quote, bills should generally come to the floor under a procedure that allows open, full, and fair debate. After contrasting today's rule with the expected health care rule in a few days, today's rule might look fair, but really it's not. It blocks amendments from both sides of the aisle from receiving a full and fair debate on the House floor, really as was, and I pointed out, promised by the Speaker. During the hearing in the Rules Committee, the ranking member, Mr. Dreyer, made a motion to allow an open rule on this legislation that's being brought to the floor. In other words, a rule that would allow all members the ability to offer any amendment for a vote by the full House. If the Rules Committee had approved the motion, it would have been their first open rule this Congress. Unfortunately, the motion was voted down by a majority on the Rules Committee. The majority used to criticize us when we were in the majority for not allowing more open rules. They have offered none. This rule that is bringing the underlying legislation to the floor today also allows the majority the authority to allow consideration of bills under suspension of the rules until Saturday. Suspension bills, as you know, Mr. Speaker, are usually non-controversial bills, but the suspension authority has in the past been used to pass bills with obviously minimal debate, and sometimes as a way to block the minority from offering amendments or a motion to recommit. Now, in the past, a senior member of the majority on the Rules Committee referred to that process as, quote, outside the normal parameters of the way the House should conduct its business. It effectively curtails our responsibilities and rights as serious legislators, end quote. It's interesting how It's wrong when they're in the minority, but once they're in the majority, it's right. I reserve.
The gentleman reserves his time.